A Florida insurance company has been touting a new form of family protection these days, abduction insurance. The company pledges to pay $10 million to any of its policyholders who were abducted by space aliens. The joke isn't that funny to people who claim they actually have been abducted, but it reflects the prevailing scientific opinion that such claims are tough to prove. Tonight, in the continuation of our series on UFOs, George Knapp looks at some of the reasons abduction claims aren't taken seriously and at a local murder case that had UFO overtones.
Stacy Borland was the driving force behind a group of Southern Nevadans interested in UFOs and alien abductions. In early March, the bodies of Borland and her brother were found in a Las Vegas apartment. Borland had been mutilated and set on fire. Her murder sent shockwaves through the UFO community, primarily because of what Borland claimed she knew. She'd confided in letters to friends that she had an inside source involved with government testing of UFOs in Nevada. The source was someone very close to her, and according to the letters, was very upset because of Borland's involvement with a UFO contactee group. The source allegedly told Borland enough about Area S4 to allow her to draw sketches of the alleged UFO base. When Borland was killed, her source was one of the first people questioned by police. The source is no longer a suspect. Lawmen have issued a warrant for a man believed to be in hiding in California. The murders are completely unrelated to UFOs, they say, but that assurance hasn't been good enough for Borland's UFO group. Membership has dwindled by 80%, partially because of wild stories being circulated by some UFO lecturers.
I've received a lot of calls from people in the so-called UFO underground, and they're just afraid. They don't know what's going on. They're afraid to come public. Stacy kind of held it together, and it's changed a lot since then.
Suddenly appeared. There's no explanation at all.
The UFO group organized by Borland is one of dozens scattered around the country dedicated to exploring the alien phenomenon. Most members don't make claims of having had an alien contact. They're merely curious. Jeff Graff is among the curious. He says he's seen numerous UFOs over the years and decided to undergo hypnotic regression after discovering a scoop-like scar on his leg. He says the regression revealed that as a child, he'd been taken on board a spaceship.
It's hard to believe, and I didn't want to really believe it myself. And even after having the regressions, I've still gone back and forth as to whether I truly believe it or not.
One reason for the reticence is that Graff isn't entirely sure his hypnosis sessions were objectively conducted. Psychologists and others say there are many problems with regressions, which is why even some abductees who've relied on the technique have doubts.
I think that hypnosis is an inappropriate technique to use to try to find out information about this. When hypnosis was used in my case by Dr. Donald Klein, and by the way, I might say to everyone, never let yourself be hypnotized by a UFO investigator. If you want to do this, go to a qualified, licensed therapist only. Anyway, I was hypnotized by him to enable me to live through the fear, not to find out the facts, and that's what it's good for.
Science has come up with several explanations why people under hypnosis claim to have been abducted by aliens. Bad dreams, wild imaginations, reactions to high stress, media brainwashing, epilepsy, and something called confabulation, in which the brain just makes up what it can't recall. Hypnotherapist Layne Keck says most of the alleged abductees that he sees are actually remembering some other traumatic or emotional experience.
One of the cases had to do with a C-section. They had seen a movie and the abduction and the probes and all of that, and they reacted strongly to that. And when they came in the office, what it turned out to be was their own birth, a traumatic experience, and they had a C-section. And they were lifted up and out, and these memories really do stay with us.
One of the main problems with hypnotic regressions is the hypnotherapist. Bud Hopkins says audiences and readers have filled his head with horror stories about hypnotists who were biased, untrained, or who were gouging their subjects for thousands of dollars. Often, the therapist is the source of the abduction fantasy.
A person under hypnosis will easily pick up what your own beliefs are and what you expect them to say. And they will lead you, consciously or unconsciously, they lead the witness to say certain things. And I have a lot of trouble with that. I think it is unethical, and I think it's not going to get us to the truth.
Bud Hopkins, who's conducted scores of regressions, couldn't agree more. During his sessions, he purposely tries to lead his subjects away from the abduction scenario, to see if they return to it on their own. But his data isn't entirely dependent on hypnosis.
Between 20 and 30% of all the cases we have, people remember them without hypnosis. Some of the most famous cases.
Hopkins also says the concept of media brainwashing doesn't hold water because even though most Americans are familiar with books and films about aliens and flying saucers, the same isn't true for the rest of the world. Yet, abductee reports from, say, New York are identical in detail to abductee reports from Zimbabwe. Besides, Hopkins has an ace in the hole that has not been made public.
I've been collecting drawings that people have made of a notational system, it would seem, numbers, letters, whatever, that they see inside UFOs on a wall or a page or something. And they're virtually identical. They've never been published, obviously. They're one of my ways of being able to test the veracity of a new witness. But I've had a situation once where, recently, where a woman made these drawings. She had remembered what she'd seen in the UFO. She'd remembered under hypnosis and partially normally. Made the drawings, and I was so stunned, I showed her a couple of other people's drawings, too, at that point to show it was exactly the same. And she took one look at the other drawings and burst into tears because she was not ready for this to be so real.
If it is real, what do they want? If it is real, might our government have good reasons for keeping the story from us? Tomorrow, some possible answers to these questions and a look at one of the most compelling UFO cases ever in the conclusion of this series. George Knapp, Eyewitness News 8.